Armageddon and blackout in Russia. Drones and missiles set the night on fire. Tens of thousands of Russians are without power. At the same time, Zelenskyy announces new attacks with Neptun and Flamingo. The occupiers launched a missile strike on a formation in the Dnipro Pokrovsk region. The General Staff denies that the award ceremony took place on the parade ground, but promises to punish those responsible. The armed forces of Ukraine have cut off the occupiers' logistics in the Dobropillia direction. Heavy fighting continues in Pokrovsk. In Kupyansk, the last enemy sabotage and reconnaissance groups are being eliminated. Belarus wants to deploy its troops in Ukraine. Putin, Zelenskyy and Trump will meet on November 23rd in the park. All this and more coming up in the broadcast. Hello, my name is Katerina Kulhan. Let's start this informational Tuesday together. Last night in the Russian Federation, a series of explosions rocked key oil refining, petrochemical and energy facilities. In Sterlitamak, Bashkortostan, there was an explosion at a petrochemical plant that is part of the Roskim holding. It produces synthetic rubbers, agrodol antioxidants, and high-activity additives for aviation gasoline. The city mayor confirmed the incident in the water treatment workshop where part of the structure collapsed. But according to official reports, there were no casualties. In Kstovo, near Nizhny Novgorod, the red glow from the fire lit up the sky after strikes on one of the 4 largest oil refineries in Russia. Lukoil Nizhny Novgorod refinery, with a capacity of 17 million tons of oil per year, or the neighboring Sibur-Kstovo petrochemical plant, which produces benzene and components for explosives. These plants are located next to each other, so the exact target of the strike is still being clarified. However, the head of the Center for Countering Disinformation at the National Security and Defense Council, Andriy Kovalenko, has already confirmed this. 2 enterprises at once, the petrochemical plant in Bashkiria and the Nizhny Novgorod oil refinery, halted operations after a drone attack last night. Drones gave Russians a precise greeting for National Unity Day in Lipetsk. There, local residents also reported loud explosions. But the consequences are still unknown. The drones did not spare the energy infrastructure either. In Frolovo-Volgograd region, UAVs struck the Frolovskaya substation with a capacity of 500 kilowatts, leaving the city without electricity and communication. In Rilsk-Kursk region, after the attack on the substation, more than 16,000 subscribers were left without power in Rilsk itself, as well as in the Glushkovsky and Kurenyovsky districts. The regional governor confirmed the outages, citing a UAV strike as the cause. Ukrainian intelligence struck the occupiers' air defense system in Crimea. The target was the command post of an S-400 Triumf, surface-to-air missile battalion, by the way, worth hundreds of millions of dollars. A multifunctional 92 N6E radar station was destroyed, and with it, the power supply equipment was also blown up. At the same time, Ukrainian intelligence forces attacked the AORL-1 AES surveillance radar, which monitors the skies over the airfield, as well as the Soviet workhorse for early detection of low-altitude targets, the P-18 Terek radar station. The total losses amount to at least $100 to $150 million. Volodymyr Zelenskyy announced significant progress in domestic arms production. According to him, the armed forces of Ukraine are already using new cruise missiles, the Flamingo and the Ruta, as well as modernized long-range Neptunes, which have proven their effectiveness in combat. Mass production of these systems is expected by the end of 2025. Meanwhile, the state order for the Flamingo will be fully completed this year. At the same time, Zelenskyy avoided specifics regarding the quantities and did not confirm plans for 3,000 missiles by the end of the year. Instead, he emphasized that Ukraine has not lost any type of long-range weapon but needs stability to ramp up production.
Not bad at all. We're moving forward in the production of our missiles. As of today, we are already using new missiles such as the Flamingo and Ruta. I won't tell you the quantity. As I said, it is expected to enter mass production by the end of this year. We have our Neptunes as well. Again, I won't disclose the number we've used. We've used various types of Neptune missiles, which are already in mass production here. The standard Neptune. We have the standard one, and we also have the long-range Neptune, which is also performing very well. Over the past month, we've been discussing the need to communicate in detail about our missiles, as well as drone missiles like Palyanitsia, Peklo, Ruta, and Flamingo, clarifying which of these are missiles and which are missile drones. We won't say more, but I think that absolutely everyone in Ukraine, and thank God in Russia as well, can already see this.
At the same time, by the end of November, the country plans to produce 600 to 800 interceptor drones per day to counter Russian Shaheds, which have become more dangerous than ballistic missiles. For every enemy UAV, at least 2 Ukrainian drones are needed. Ukraine is also ready to export naval drones. There are twice as many of them available as are currently used by the Navy, the Security Service of Ukraine, the Special Operations Forces, and the Main Intelligence Directorate. And also artillery systems of 122mm, 152mm, and 155mm calibers. In particular, up to 40 units of the Bogdana self-propelled howitzer are produced per month. This is necessary in order to finance the production of items that are in short supply. Zelenskyy proposed to partners a model of 100% financing of production, a 50-50 split of the finished products, with some countries ready to transfer their share to Kyiv. In addition, the Ministry of Defense announced new contracts for the armed forces of Ukraine for 1 to 5 years, with clear terms of service, a 1-year deferment from mobilization after 2 to 5 years, increased payments, signing bonuses, and an expanded social benefits package. They will be available to current and future military personnel after legislative changes are made. The goal is to ensure fairness and motivation. To this end, the 2026 budget allocates 2.8 trillion hryvnias. Regarding the front, Zelenskyy urged commanders not to be afraid to report lost positions.
Well, first of all, there's nothing to be afraid of because this is a war against such a massive machine. You shouldn't be afraid of losing a position. You need to be smart. If you preserved your personnel, that's great because you still have your people. Later, you'll figure out how to restore your position. And if there are no personnel and you have lost personnel, that's a different matter.
Regarding Kupyansk, according to Zelenskyy, up to 60 occupiers remain there. The cleanup is continuing according to a schedule set at the stake, although the dates are not being disclosed. In the Pokrovsk direction, where 30% of all battles are concentrated and 50% of KBs are used there, the enemy has not had any success in recent days. According to the president, there are currently 260 to 300 Russians in the city. The defense is being held by the air assault forces, Marines, and MEG brigades. And Pokrovsk is still holding on. The Shuar and the Armed Forces of Ukraine are conducting a joint operation. The Timur Special Unit is holding a key logistical area. Reinforcements have been delivered by helicopter. A ground corridor has been established. Ukrainian forces are cutting off the enemy's supply routes and advancing forward, forcing the Russians to retreat. Fierce fighting continues. Details of the operation are not being disclosed for security reasons. A new report from analysts at the Institute for the Study of War states that Russian forces continue to intensify offensive operations in Pokrovsk and its surroundings in an effort to capture the city and encircle the Ukrainian salient. The latest news about the situation on this section of the front is coming up in our report.
The enemy is indeed being observed in almost all neighborhoods and districts of the city.
The most difficult direction, Syrsky-Budanov, is already there. The Pokrovsk direction remains the hottest spot of combat clashes. However, as Syrsky reports, the city is holding on.
In the Pokrovsk-Myrnorad agglomeration, our soldiers have to withstand the pressure of an enemy force numbering in the thousands, which continues its attempts to infiltrate residential areas and cut off our supply routes. However, there is no encirclement or blockade of the cities. We are doing everything possible to maintain logistics.
And how close are the enemy forces to encircling or blockading the city?
Formally, the city is not encircled, but in practice, the airspace is closed off. In practice, they keep supplying equipment, ammunition, people, and more people there. It will become practically impossible and will guarantee the destruction of any vehicle attempting to travel on this road. The width of the bottleneck needed to finally close this encirclement is about 5 kilometers.
Budanov, the head of the GUR, has also been spotted alongside Syrsky. It is assumed that he is personally involved in coordinating the defense.
Mr. Syrsky went there solely to show that there is no encirclement. In other words, he made fools of all the Russian propagandists. He arrived on site and demonstrated to everyone that there is no encirclement, no ring. But again, we don't know how deep into the city he actually went.
But still, the main task lies elsewhere.
The question is not about holding the city. The question is about buying time and allowing our troops to get out of this trap, especially those in the south. At the very bottom, when you look at this pocket, our units and soldiers are there too, and it's about giving them the chance to get out of the encirclement. And if possible, to pull out more equipment and machinery.
It is known that Budanov led the GUAR airborne operation in Pokrovsk. Now, combined groups from the Special Operations Forces, Military Law Enforcement Service, the Security Service of Ukraine, and other Defense Forces units are operating there.
The phrase of Ukraine refers to something that originates from, belongs to, or is associated with the country of Ukraine, which is located in Eastern Europe. Ukraine is known for its rich history, diverse culture, and important role in the region. When we use the term of Ukraine, we are describing a connection to this nation, its people, its traditions, or its land.
Nevertheless, the situation in Pokrovsk does not prevent Ukrainian soldiers from successfully eliminating the occupiers in the city one by one. Ukrainian soldiers have been holding the city for more than 13 months now, since the moment when, according to the Russians' plan, it was supposed to fall. But even if the city is lost, Ukraine will not be defeated.
Ukraine has gained time here for itself and for Europeans. In other words, over these 13 months, we have bought time in weapons production, in re-equipment, in revising strategy. The Russians, without exaggeration, have lost time. They have wasted it. Yes, they will capture this city this week, next week, or at the end of the month, and they will be terribly pleased about it.
And still, why has Russia intensified its offensive in this particular direction right now?
Pokrovsk has simply become a regular feature in the constant reports from the Russian General Staff in the Kremlin. I think someone there lost their temper and said, "How much longer can this go on? You've been dancing around it for 13 months already and you haven't had any success. Do something." And of course, the Russian military salute and are ready to sacrifice. If they need another 10,000, they'll throw in another 10,000 Russian soldiers just to achieve some result. Because everyone understands perfectly well, if you deliver results, you can get the Hero of the Russian Federation medal or General's stripes.
They throw in everything they can. For Russia, the concept of cost doesn't exist. Every meter of land means thousands of Russian casualties. And all of this is just so the Kremlin dictator can put another checkmark on the map.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
Ukrainian forces have cut the road toward Shakhove on the Dobropillia salient, putting the enemy grouping at risk of being split. This was reported by Ukrainian militant. Experts note that intense fighting continues on the Dobropillia salient. After the enemy's active operations, our units carried out a series of local counterattacks, advancing to the southwest of Vilna and Novi Shakhove. As a result, the road toward Shakhove was cut. After all, control over this settlement remains key to stabilizing the front line and further improving the positions of Ukrainian forces, who continue to maintain the initiative on the flanks and are gradually straightening the defensive line. A tragedy in the Dnipro region. The Russians launched a missile and drone strike on a Ukrainian Armed Forces base during a military award ceremony. There are dead and wounded. Both defenders and civilians, including children, were affected. The incident occurred on November 1st. The occupiers used ballistic missiles, likely Iskanders, and 3 Shaheds, striking the center of a settlement in the Samarivsky district. There were soldiers from one of the Marine brigades of the 30th Corps of the Ukrainian Navy present there. According to TSN journalist Dmytro Sviatnenko, the strike hit precisely during the formation of the brigade's best pilots and infantrymen for a ceremonial award presentation in an open area, due to the ban on gathering personnel in zones within reach of enemy missiles, which can arrive within minutes. Among the dead is the journalist's 43-year-old brother, Volodymyr Znakary Sviatnenko, a drone pilot of the 35th Marine Brigade who since 2023 had fought through hellish battles in Ukrinki, Kurakove, Marinka and Krasnohorivka, but was killed in a relatively rear area. The East Group confirmed losses among the military, and the 30th Marine Corps clarified that the strike hit the center of the settlement, where there is no parade ground, also disputing some other details circulating on social media. However, they did acknowledge the deaths of both soldiers and civilians, including children. They say that certain mid-level officials have already been suspended for violating safety order. A pre-trial investigation has also already begun. Currently, compliance with requirements for air raid alerts, the organization of shelters, and the prohibition of meetings and gatherings in open areas is being checked. The former Chief of Staff of the 12th Brigade of the National Guard of Ukraine, Azov, Bohdan Krotevych, accused Colonel Manko of disclosing secret maps, which could have aided Russian intelligence. The defender of Mariupol is demanding an investigation from the State Bureau of Investigation, SBI. In his post, he claims that photos of combat maps from the Delta and Krotevych systems revealed the positions of Ukrainian forces, including observation posts in the village of Basivka near the border with the Russian Federation, where blue triangles marked our units without fortifications in the neighboring newly established area. This information, published even before the territory was occupied by the enemy, could have been used for artillery strikes or sabotage, since the map contained tactical symbols, fire targets, and enemy fortifications. Formally, the map was not classified as secret, but only for official use. But this is still classified information, prohibited from disclosure without permission. Krotevych emphasizes that the identification of the area by experts and the publication dates confirm the risk, and the General Staff's disregard may constitute an abuse of authority, especially given previous inspections that found nothing, despite analysts' remarks, for example, from Deep State, about inconsistency. He urges the officers of the Armed Forces of Ukraine to contact the State Bureau of Investigation, to have the information entered into the Unified Register of Pre-Trial Investigations under the article on disclosure of official information during martial law. Manko, the head of the General Staff's Assault Units Department and a potential candidate for higher positions, has so far not commented on the new accusation. However, he previously explained that the published maps were based on Google Maps with his personal markings. They did not contain sensitive data, and the content only reflected the general situation without posing any threat to the operation. After an internal review on October 31st, the General Staff confirmed that the photos do not contain restricted information and do not pose a risk to the defense forces. The Russians have improved the Shaheds, and now they are harder to intercept. And the most troubling thing is that the American side is helping the occupiers with this. Details in the report.
In addition to the war on the front lines, there is also a technological war going on.
Our enemy is very technologically dangerous, cunning, and unpredictable because they can change everything in an instant.
Communication systems, control systems, and electronic warfare play an important role. The key issue is a comprehensive approach in order to be able to counter the enemy.
The speeds are no longer the same, and so on. The enemy uses various means to make their drones less vulnerable to our electronic warfare systems.
Jet-powered Shahed drones, which are unmanned aerial vehicles equipped with advanced electronic warfare countermeasures, were recently observed flying over Ukrainian territory. These countermeasures are designed to help the drones evade detection and interference from enemy air defense systems, making them more effective during operations in Ukraine's airspace. This right over here for you.
This is not the first modernization of the Shahed that the Russians have developed in attempts to bypass Ukrainian air defense. These RPA antennas are devices that allow drones to maintain navigation even under active electronic jamming. These antennas are now produced in Russia, but the design was originally developed in Ukraine back in the early 2000s. Now on enemy territory in
2025, the modernization of the drones of death continues. They use FHSS technology across the entire frequency range, meaning it is resistant to electronic warfare, but this is considered possible. To counter this, we simply need to adopt a new approach to adapt, so to speak, to ourselves and to the Russians' new tactics.
The Russians have gone even further. They hid these antennas inside the body, removed them from the wing, and moved them into the center of the Shahed drone. In this way, the enemy's drones become virtually invulnerable to Ukraine's electronic warfare systems.
What does this tell an observant and intelligent person? It means that the factory has modified the Shahed drone body specifically for these Chinese antennas. This means the enemy is confident in a long-term and stable partnership with China. We cannot suppress such antennas with our existing electronic warfare systems everywhere across the country.
Serhiy Beskresnov also confirmed that this nuance indicates close cooperation between Russia and China. Russian billionaires are doing everything they can to help Putin in this war. They are establishing contacts with China and the United States. For example, Deripaska.
Access to technology and equipment is also closed off. And there is a list of critical items. In
2024, the Russian LLC Angar 22 purchased Svivin turbojet engines for a total amount of about $300,000. Officially, they are intended for model aviation. However, these units were later put to a completely different use. They were installed on a jet-powered modification of the Iranian Shahed drone. At the same time, the owners of Angar 22 are classified and information about the beneficiaries is concealed. According to old registry data, the founder was the joint stock company Krasko, which was linked to Deripaska. Other subsidiary structures, according to documents, are only partially state-owned. But there is also the development corporation South Invest. It is associated with the same Deripaska structure. We
all know that near China there are special economic zones, minimal taxes, cooperation.
Supplies to the company linked to Putin's wallet came directly from the Chinese manufacturer Svivin, which also has an American branch, Svivin USA. Angar 22 is already under American sanctions. In fact, the story of Angar is an illustration of how the Russian military-industrial complex, cut off from Western technologies, looks for workarounds. This is how it cooperates with the states through China under the guise of scientific research.
Russia currently ranks 4th in China's overall trade turnover. This matters to everyone.
The Russians regularly upgrade their drones to carry out attacks on Ukraine. The Russian armed forces have started making them even more deadly for strikes. During attacks on the Sumy region, Russian occupiers began using Shaheds with anti-tank mines attached. They
continue to further scale up production, and as we must truly understand, with all the available resources, with financial support, with every possible means at their disposal, they will absolutely not stop.
Monitoring groups report that Russia is preparing Shaheds with phosphorus munitions. Being within 150 meters of the impact zone can lead to fatal consequences. The Kremlin is betting specifically on cheap kamikaze drones, not missiles. Therefore, they plan to increase the production of Shaheds and other types of UAVs. A plan has been set to produce at least 36,000 strike drones. The Ukrainian side is not resting on its laurels and continues to work on improving its own interceptor drones. And not only that.
Volodymyr Zelenskyy and Putin could have met at the G20 Summit in Johannesburg at the end of November. This was stated by the President of Finland, Alexander Stubb. He also did not rule out the participation of Donald Trump. However, as is known, no meetings are being prepared at this time. The US and Russia cancelled previous plans for talks in Budapest due to Moscow's unwavering stance on territorial concessions from Ukraine. According to Stubb, the Central Asian countries could act as intermediaries between the White House and the Kremlin. And the G20 Summit on November 22nd to 23rd could become the ideal platform for a meeting between the presidents of Ukraine, Russia, and the United States. Belarus has declared its readiness to deploy its peacekeepers on the territory of Ukraine if needed and at the request of both parties to the conflict. The head of the Department of International Military Cooperation and Peacekeeping Activities of the Special Operations Forces Command of the Armed Forces of Belarus, Oleksandr Skabe, says that Belarusian military personnel are ready to move to any region to carry out their tasks immediately after receiving the appropriate decision. Earlier in January, Lukashenko had already proposed Belarusian peacekeepers as the only option for normal relations between Ukraine and Russia without deploying them on the front line. In Gdynia, Poland, police detained 44-year-old anti-Ukrainian activist and video streamer Piotr N., known by the pseudonym Nazar. He became known for tearing down Ukrainian flags, posting anti-Ukrainian videos on social media, and justifying Russian aggression against Ukraine. During a drug test, tetrahydrocannabinol was found in his system. Blood samples were sent for laboratory analysis. The activist himself behaved aggressively, live-streamed his detention on his social media, hurled insults at law enforcement officers, and during the conversation admitted to trading in fake documents and openly expressed admiration for Vladimir Putin, calling him the savior of Europe from the Nazis. The prosecutor's office of Dini immediately brought 6 new charges against Nazar for inciting hatred and discrimination based on nationality and religion, promoting violence, calls for terrorism, and supporting the aggressor. The Italian Ministry of Foreign Affairs sharply condemned the vulgar comment made by Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova regarding the partial collapse of the medieval Torre dei Conti in the center of Rome. They summoned the Russian ambassador to Italy for an official protest. Zakharova cynically linked the collapse to military support for Ukraine, stating that as long as the Italian government continues to squander taxpayers' money, Italy will completely collapse, from its economy to its towers. In Rome, these were called despicable and disturbing words that confirm the depths of vulgarity into which the Russian leadership has plunged. The Italian Ministry of Foreign Affairs emphasized that no one in Italy, absolutely no one, would ever allow themselves to take pleasure because to exploit an incident, a tragedy in which all Italians are emotionally involved. Italy will always, under any circumstances, express solidarity and friendship with those who are weaker or in trouble, those who are under attack. That is precisely why it supports the Ukrainian people. The collapse occurred on November 3rd during restoration work at the Imperial Forums. Part of a 35-meter tower from the 13th century, one of the oldest in Rome, collapsed during the reinforcement of the walls, burying 5 workers under the rubble. At first, only 4 people were rescued, and a 66-year-old man was pulled out alive only after more than 10 hours, thanks to the combined efforts of 140 rescuers, firefighters, and archaeologists. Meanwhile, Z-propagandists have begun preparing Russians for a fiasco in the war. For the main trends and latest developments in the field of Kremlin propaganda, here is Yeva Nikolashvili.
Russian propagandists and Z-patriots are at the stage of acceptance.
Even if we achieve some kind of exchange and get, well, just the last part of Donetsk region, basically, it will still be a very ambiguous situation, a very untriumphant outcome.
Now, even on Rossiya TV, they are talking about failure at the front.
Well, it's already been 3.5 years. He's right, there was a campaign. We were already in Berlin in about 4 years. Where are we now? Only 20% of the territory has been liberated. Well, we need to be honest. Experts.
So laughing at the bold reports from the Russian Ministry of Aggression about the Russian army's advances along the line.
Of contact. And also, just to clarify, let me emphasize, and to make sure everything is absolutely clear,
they openly state that the so-called special military operation, we
have declared that we are not changing the objectives that have been set. But in my opinion, if anyone is interested, it seems to me that everything is heading toward Russia probably agreeing to what is called a deal. A deal always implies compromise, and compromise means stepping back from the goals and intentions that were previously declared.
To be fair, all of this hasn't yet been mentioned on the federal channels. On those channels, as before, it's all about victory. But since there's really nothing to say about the front, they show
Kremlin doors with the sign library, the personal library of the head of the Russian state.
Kremlin propagandists are tirelessly working to show how the Tsar cares about his people. Supposedly, he remembers every soldier and keeps memorable gifts in his personal library. Special attention is given to the banner of the 155th Separate Marine Brigade. This brigade is known for committing war crimes in Bucha, Hostomel, and Irpin.
New shelves. In
December, they gave this to us and asked that it be kept here in the round hall of the special library.
I specifically brought it with me. Let's consider this the banner of the 155th Marine Brigade of the Pacific Fleet. Here, all the battle flags of our fighters who are now fighting for the motherland along the entire line of contact are represented.
Meanwhile, the singer Yolka has decided to completely distance herself from Ukraine so that nothing in Putin's Russia would remind anyone of her origins. The thing is, Yolka is originally from Uzhhorod, but since the beginning of the full-scale war, she has remained silent. However, her position was clear. She lived in Russia and continued to give concerts. And no one in Ukraine would have been waiting for her. But now Yolka, also known as Elizaveta Ivantsiv, has decided to completely break ties with her homeland. Thank you. Even in her songs. The singer removed the mention of Borispil from her hit Provence and performed a visibly altered version of the song in Moscow. By the way, speaking of songs, the latest trend of the Kremlin regime is influencing children through music, right in schools and at the official level. In November, students are subjected to propaganda during every break.
School breaks in November will take place to music dedicated to National Unity Day. Students will hear modern patriotic songs about friendship, mutual support, and love for the homeland.
A Ukrainian woman shared a touching story. The woman said that for 23 days she did not receive any news from her husband, a serviceman of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, who was stationed at positions in the Donetsk region. And at the first opportunity, he sent his beloved 3 sunflowers picked straight from a field in Donbas. The post on social media has already gathered thousands of likes. Some other women also shared their own stories in the comments. That's all we have time to share for now. Join the discussion as well. Hit the like button under this video. Leave your comments and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss the most interesting news. See you next time.